you, Mr Pritchard, I beg to move that this House has considered paternity leave and pay in the UK. Thank you, Mr Pritchard. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship. My first Westminster Hall debate being chaired by my neighbouring Member of Parliament. It's a delight to be here. I know families come in all shapes and sizes, and paternity leave isn't just about fathers. But I will primarily refer to dads in my speech, but the points that I'm making relate to and apply to all families of all shapes and sizes. I stand here as a dad, a parent, an MP who believes that parenthood matters to children, to families, to employers, and to the economy and to our country. The UK currently has the worst paternity pay and leave in Europe and among the worst in the OECD. Fathers, if they are eligible, and around 20% of them are not, can take a maximum of 2 weeks paid leave at a maximum rate of £184 a week, less than half the national living wage. In 2023, 605,000 babies were born in the UK, yet only 195,000 dads received statutory paternity pay. That's less than one father for every 3 children. Contrast that with 52 weeks of maternity leave, with 39 weeks of maternity pay, and it's clear that our system needs to be updated for the 21st century. As a father myself, I do have a vested interest in this issue, but better paternity rights aren't just good for fathers, they are good for mums, and more importantly, they are better and good for children. I was able to speak to a number of parents at an event in Parliament with the Dad Shift campaign last week, and I heard from several dads the difference paternity leave, or the lack of it, has made to their relationships with their young children. I want to live in a society where children can see both parents as caregivers, but for that to happen, it needs to be possible for both parents to be present during those vital early years. Evidence shows that the physical and social bonds that are set so early are critical for babies as they grow up, and to fathers, the father's connection to the children in later life. I heard from one dad, Simon, at the event in Parliament, who suffered from undiagnosed depression after the birth of his child. That was made worse because there wasn't the time that he had with his child, that bond to develop and to establish. This isn't the 1950s. We can all agree that the most men do want to have relationships with their children, especially during the early years, but the law does not reflect that. Another dad I spoke to, George, had a generous employer who gave him more than the statutory pay and leave, and he spoke glowingly about the difference that made, both to his own mental health and well-being, but also, of course, the balance in the household and the relationship with his child. It was great to hear that there's a number of employers going above and beyond the statutory minimum, but as of 2022, 49% of employers covered the minimum statutory paternity leave, and this simply is too important, I would suggest, to leave at the whim of individual employers. And change needs to start within government and the public sector. I recently tabled a number of written questions to government departments asking how much paternity leave their staff took on average. The only department whose staff took more than the 14 days was the Department for Education, whereas other departments such as Transport at 9.6 days, the DWP 7.25 days, and the Cabinet Office were ranking the worst with 5.7 days. The government and the public sector should be exemplary employers, but they are instead lagging behind some other private sector employers. And we need this first step, a signal from the government and from the public sector as a whole, that this is something that needs to be improved. As at the Dad Shift event, I heard from mums and dads about the toll the segregated system had taken on their own careers. Making it easier for dads to look after the kids also makes it easier for mums to continue in their workplace. And the point that my honourable friend from Walthamstow has made so passionately in the Chamber only this week. It is morally wrong to pressure women into sacrificing their career for their family. It's also a massive productivity drain as well. This government wants to restore growth, create jobs and create wealth. The Centre of Progressive Policy estimates that closing the gender employment gap in all UK local authorities could increase economic output by a staggering £23 billion. And the OECD estimates that 3/4 of the gender wage gap in Northern and Western Europe is down to the motherhood penalty. How many talented women are we losing from the workforce because they can't get back into work after lengthy maternity leave? How much better off could we be if both parents could take leave short enough not to harm their own careers, but long enough to support their children? And technically, that is already an option with the changes that took place in 2015 with shared paternity rights. However, the government's own analysis found that only 1% of eligible mothers and 5% of eligible fathers took shared parental leave. And I heard from one father, Alex, who told me that the system and the process was so complicated that he paid a third party £50 to complete the forms because it was so complicated to navigate. Things are about to get better. I'm delighted that the government has had the second reading of the Employment Rights Bill only this week, and that will mark a massive step forward on paternity leave and pay, expanding eligibility by introducing day one rights to paternity and parental leave, allowing fathers to take paternity leave after they've taken shared parental leave, and a full review of all parental leave rights. It's clear that the government recognises that this is an issue and that further steps need to be taken. I will on that point.
I thank my honourable friend from Telford for giving way. He's making an excellent speech on an issue that is clearly of importance to so many of us. But would he accept and agree that 2 weeks paternity pay, even if the birth of your child has been straightforward and simple, passes very quickly? If there is a complication in the birth, if there is an illness for the mother, if the child has complications, actually that 2 weeks disappears in a blink of an eye, and then parents and fathers go back to work, and actually fathers feel guilty about not being able to be home to support at a time of need.
I think the honourable friend from Stoke-on-Trent makes a very powerful contribution. My own brother was born 3 months premature, and that ability for my own father to be there was curtailed by the fact that the paternity leave just simply wasn't generous enough. The Employment Rights Bill, which I welcome, goes some way towards addressing the eligibility problem. But there's more that we can do. Research by the Centre of Progressive Policy, Women in Data and Pregnant and Then Screwed found that countries with longer paternity leave have lower gender wage gaps and lower gender workforce participation gaps than countries like our own. This leave doesn't just need to be longer, it needs to be better paid. In line with statutory maternity pay, 90% of earnings for the first 6 weeks, and it needs to be a use it or lose it and non-transferable to encourage take-up. Fundamentally, the root problem is the assumption that there must always be one primary parent. That will suit some families, but it benefits no one to force that choice upon everyone. The campaign for fair parental leave and pay is a campaign to normalise co-parenting. I'm making a number of asks of the Minister, and I want to just acknowledge his work in regards to the updating of the employment rights across the country. And I think he should be congratulated for that work. But I do think that we are able to go further. And I do believe that we must not let the good be the enemy of the great. We must applaud the progress that's being made, affirm that we could go further, and ask his department to review the rights around parental leave so that we can have that contribution and that conversation. This is our generation of MPs' moment to drag working practices into the 21st century for the benefits of dads, mums, society and our country, but most of all for our children growing up. Let's give British children their dads back. Let's be pro-growth, pro-worker, pro-business, pro-children and importantly, pro-family.
The question is that